Alright, welcome back to Nick Lenz's Comic Corner Classic. That's non-classic. This episode number 3361, double shot number 3255. I have two DC trades. One is actually the second to last trade for this particular one. The other is a limited series that had a weird idea for follow-up. First we have is Task Force Z Volume 2, What's Eating You? I was kind of surprised to find this. I thought it was my local Ollie's, and this is a newer trade. Yes, this is came out about a year or two ago, I think it was. It's very, very recent. How recent was this one? 2 years ago. Yes. I viewed the first trade a couple years ago, and this is basically the second half of the book, collecting issues 7 to 12 of the series. Written by Matthew Rosenberg, artwork by Eddie Barrows, Edward Ferreira, Jack Herbert, Jesus Moreno, Dan Hutter, and Vincent Cafos. Yeah, so those who forgot about Task Force Z, what it is, it's basically a group of dead characters, basically, the best way to describe it, basically, they're back from dead. Some got killed off in the Hit comics, some got killed off in Batman, or other books, per se. So we start with Red Hood beating the crap out of other villains. He looks like he's beating up Poison Ivy, Killer Croc, Ra's al Ghul, Penguin, Catwoman, who is actually a hero. So, yeah, and then we see apparently look like Robin, but nope, it's not him. And he wakes up. Yeah, it's basically a place called the Chop Shop, where, get this, he's in bed, and he's butt naked, and there's there's basically a beautiful woman. I think this is Arkham Knight, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so, and apparently she has no reaction to seeing his groin. Yes. So then we meet up with the guy running Task Force Z, that being Two-Face. Yes, Two-Face with Bane, KG Beast, and Mr. Freeze. So, yeah. So, and then we see, I think, Copperhead, who bites KG Beast. And then we go to a place where it's I'm at home, Mr. Notorious, and safe house for the Victim Syndicate. I'm like, this is interesting. Because, of course, the last time they appeared was when James Team IV was writing Detective. And Mr. Freeze shows up and freezes them, of course. And apparently then they have Solomon Grundy here for some random reason, and fights Bane. And then we see Mr. Bloom playing with a baby infected with the Man-Bat formula for some reason. He's at basically the Power International. So then we have, looks like Victor Zsasz fighting Red Hood for reasons. And Two-Face basically pops in. It's like, oh, he's a federal agent. And basically they do bring up about what's going on with Amanda Waller's through the coup. That basically is all Earth 3 stuff here. So yeah, have a problem and stuff with KG Beast. And then basically, apparently, okay, so the thing bringing people alive is a drug known as rosin, which is made from the Lazarus Pits. Yep. So, and then Red Hood basically is a new Batcave where he runs into Barbara Gordon, aka Oracle. Yeah, and then we have Bloom basically just torturing Man-Bat for some reason. And then we see Nightwing appear here, and of course they have them fight each other. Yeah, basically Red Hood is fighting his own Bat family. Oh, and do you know who's not here in this book? There's no Damian. There's Dick as Nightwing. You have Tim as Robin, and now basically you have, well, Batgirl and Batman himself shows up here. And also we have Cassie Kane. Interesting. I love the artwork. It's amazing. And then we have Stephanie Brown meet up with, of course, Jason Todd. Powers International Task Force D basically does their thing. Takes on the Victim Syndicate, which is interesting. Yeah. And I'm thinking, like, in the case of this book, it's like Rosenberg is assembling a group of Batman villains to take care of loose threads from other writers' works. Like the Victim Syndicate was a group of characters who had their own story arc. They had a couple follow-ups afterwards, and then, like, nothing until this book came out. So then we have one person dying, and then we have Bane going nuts. And we'll review what's going on with Bane soon. So, yeah, and it turns out this Bane is not actually Bane. Well, we'll find out in a minute who he is. And then we have Bloom basically fighting Red Hood, and everybody gets up like, oh, Bloom's here. Yep. And then we have Waddler's team just wondering what the heck is going on. They're doing his own thing here. Bloom is working with Waller. Then we have Bloom fighting Solomon Grundy. Oh yeah, and it turns out Bane is actually none other than a character who died in the opening story arc of Tom King's run for Batman, Gotham. Yeah, this retconned the fact that Bane didn't die. Kind of, anyways. It's revealed that, yeah, Bane been the whole book. Yeah, it was Gotham all along. Yeah, Bane was going to be alive in the pages of Batman and Robin. So, why in the world, basically, they have Gotham here? No idea. So, basically, Two-Face has a random big guy, and then here comes Gotham Girl, which I believe this was her first time she appeared in comics since the end of Tom King's run of Batman that she appears in this book, where she's looking for her brother, obviously. She's happy to see him again. And I wonder KGB says Deadshot is here, who, by the way, is dead. He got killed off when Tom Taylor wrote Suicide Squad. Man-Bat was killed, and then all of a sudden, and this is really weird, it's like Matthew Rosenberg is paying, basically having a nod to not only Tom King, but freaking Scott Snyder. We have Bloom wearing the Chappie Batman suit. Okay, some of you probably are new, wondering why in the world is this referred to as the Chappie Batman suit? Because when people first saw this suit, oh my gosh, this was like, how long ago was this? 10 years ago people first saw this suit, and they called that because of the weird ears, and because a movie that was released at the period of time called Chappie, directed by Neil Blomkamp, who also did District 9 and Epsilon, which some people point out Epsilon and District 9 were basically the same movie. People didn't say that about Chappie. It just took place in South America. So, yeah. Then we have KG Beast finding. Now, those of you curious, when did KG Beast die? I think he died. I think it was in Batman. I think it was. I think so. Yes. Actually, maybe in Nightwing. So, Two-Face tried to take him out. Then, and of course, Bloom basically does his own thing. And then we have two characters interact, Gotham and Mr. Bloom, which is interesting because Mr. Bloom made his debut toward the last year of Scott Snyder's Batman, and Gotham is from the first story arc of Tom King's Batman. Man-Bat does his own thing here. Then Gotham goes on a rampage and fights Mr. Bloom. Yes, two characters written by two well-known Batman writers. And of the two guys currently, Tom King is running Wonder Woman currently, and Scott Snyder is doing amazing stuff in Absolute Batman. To me. Yes. So we have Mr. Bloom taken out by Jason Todd. And, well, and of course, basically, the whole thing with Rosin. And Jason goes into hiding for some reason. And then somebody, we have all these dead people here, including Arkham Knight, Deadshot, KG Beast, apparently Red Hood, even though it's not Red Hood. And then these two people working in the morgue are shot by somebody. And we see Blue, Man-Bat, Copperhead, KG Beast. Deadshot. All members tests revived by none other than, also apparently one member of Victim Syndicate here. I think it was first victim. Revived by Two-Face. Yes, by Two-Face. And then we have a cover gallery, and that's it. Quite interesting book, per se. I think for some people that probably didn't know this book even existed, per se. But this book is fantastic. I give this book a... give it a 9 out of 10. Book was a lot of fun to read. And the thing about this book is, it's not a book people talk about. I've never heard anybody talk about this book. Is it a terror book? Not really, no. Of course, Red himself will occasionally do some afterwards. I thought it was probably the most interesting about these issues is the Victim Syndicate. Yes. Because they are a group of characters, like I mentioned, who have not been seen since James Tynion's Batman run. You're like, really? Yes, really. It's a group of characters. Yeah, so they debuted in Detective Comics 943. And they're comprised of Mr. Noxious, Mudface, Mute. They formerly had Madame Crow. Yeah. And she got killed off in this book. You're like, really? Yeah. So she returned in this book here after she was in prison. Like, it's kind of interesting the fact that we have this really cool group of characters, and then it's like as soon as Tynion wraps up his run, like, by the way, prior to appearing in issue 4 of this book, our last appearance was back in December 2017. She returned this book in issue 4 and became a recurring character in this book. Where she returned roughly about 5 years, almost 5 years later, because it was not something. I think everybody was like, "Really, the Victim Syndicate?" Now, the first victim leader of Victim Syndicate, it's not really known exactly what the heck he does. He himself just appeared in issue 7, where I think he previously appeared. It looked like he previously appeared in a Harley Quinn annual. Mr. Freeze leaves the team, and of course they kill off Copperhead along with Victor Zsasz and Madame Crow, but they're brought back here. Madame Crow dies and stays dead. At one point they had Anarchy part of this group. Yes, Anarchy. Well, it's the Lennon Minchin version. Like I mentioned, basically, like, issue 7 was basically the return. Sweet. Where, like, one died, and, like, it's like, okay, let's bring these guys back here. And then do nothing. You're like, really? Yeah. And those of you might be asking, did Victor Zsasz appear again against the appears in this book? Does he appear again as the book wraps up? He pops up at Night Terror's Nightwing. Yeah. My only guess is the reason why Victim Syndicate was thrown into this book, because, like I mentioned, they are just a leftover group from James Tynion, which, it's like, yeah, they're prevalent in his run. They pretty much appeared, I think, in the final issue. Well, First Victim did. I mean, you could think basically Tynion basically giving these characters spotlight for characters he helped created in this book. But it's like, I guess either he told somebody, don't do anything with these characters, because maybe he had planned to do something. But as of currently, nothing has been done with these characters. You're like, really? Yeah, really. Oh, in case you're curious, though. They last appeared in issue 3. It was 973 for Detective. Tynion for later leave with 981. Yep, 981. That's when pretty much basically so yeah, at the period of 2 years in the book, he left the book. But it's like, what about Victim Syndicate? In a way, they're technically the only original creations Tynion had created for this book, per se. Well, along with the Colony. Yeah, but aside from that, it's like, is that really all he did for Detective? Well, he did create the Gotham Knights team, obviously, and the Victim Syndicate, but aside from that, but it was a good run. And then he created a bunch of characters for his Batman, which I love his Batman run. And then he's left DC Comics now. I met Rosenberg, cool guy. I met Eddie Burrows, great that he did this book because he helped create the Victim Syndicate. Actually, it's Avril Minty has been, I think he helped draw them a few times, but at least basically has to work on it, which is really cool. Alright, so next up we have is another Milestone Returns book, this time being Hardware Season 1. Yes, Hardware was a series published on Milestone. I think it was actually the longest title under that particular imprint, per se. Now, Hardware introduced the character of Edwin Alva, a character who is a... Those of you remember the character from the Static TV show, like, oh, is he associated with Static Shock because he's been in the TV show? Not really, no. Edwin Alva, Edwin, the guy who appears in the show, him and his son, they're from Hardware. They're not from Static Shock at all. They took elements into other people's runs. So, Hardware, which... The follow-up to this was Hardware versus Icon, which Icon appears in the... Icon does not appear in the book, but Rocket does. Along with John Stewart for some weird reason, yes. They threw in John Stewart with the Green Lantern Corps. So, this book is roughly 6 issues plus a Returns Infinite Edition. You have basically 3 writers of the book, which are Brandon Thomas, Reginald Holland, and Greg Pak. Worked by Dennis Cowan, Bel Sienkiewicz, Nicholas Draper-Avely, Chris Cross, Ryan Benjamin, Kyle Boom, Jim Fabiani, Don Hoy, and Scott Hanna. Of these people, I met Greg. I met Greg Pak. The artist, I met Jim Fabiani. I think I met Kyle Boom once. I think it was just this year. So, first we start off with, I think this is the... so we have the Big Bang. which is the story is written by Reginald Holland. So pretty much it's basically we have these soldiers, and it's the Black Lives Matter. The people who protest against violence against black people, which I have nothing against the protesting when they originally did it 5 years ago. I did not like the fact that this protesting was associated with violence that resulted in arson, looting, and it all happened in 2020. And they're kind of continuing now with the No Kings protests, even though they're started based upon, from my opinion, a bunch of bullcrap. And the thing AFTA is basically a good group of people, despite the fact AFTA are terrorists. Why in the world they support AFTA, I have no idea. Because AFTA are basically, they actually blow up buildings. Yes. So, people protested with masks on against came on 2020, obviously. Go home. And I should point out, though, it is technically legal to protest in the U.S. So Stag participates with them, which seems a bit out of character. Then we have Hardware puts on his outfit here, which is the same similar attire he wore in the original comic. So the whole thing with Hardware is that he is basically the Milestone imprint version of Iron Man, kind of, except he's not rich. So Stag does his own thing per se by himself. And of course, and here's basically the connection to the main DCU. Actually, I thought this was Jon Stewart. Looking closely at him, that's Icon. Except that you look at the suit, like the face looks so much like Jon Stewart. He's mistaken for Jon Stewart, and that's obviously Rocket. I know who she is. And also, they made her basically wear this outfit for some reason. By the way, a little fun fact about Rocket. They did at one point she had to briefly give a super hit because she got pregnant. And you're probably thinking, did Icon get her pregnant? No, he did not get her pregnant. It was her boyfriend at the time. I remember who it was, but and she gave birth to a baby. Then she became a superhero, no problem. Yeah. It's just that anybody can tell basically the way this is drawn. Like, you look closely at this guy here. Like, without looking at a symbol, does that look like Jon Stewart? Yeah, that looks like Jon Stewart. Except, close look at it, it's Icon. Yeah, it's just how he's drawn. Of course, ship crashes. As for why Icon in this book, which I guess that, of course, it's just the Infinite book, and then we start the main book itself, just to clearly establish the fact that all these characters play in the same universe. So mostly put that particular story there. That was basically how he got the way he is. And Hardware, just a guy wearing this suit, fighting against Alva Industries. Here's Alva himself, this old man. Kind of in a way, the way he's kind of written here a little bit, he kind of reminds me of the Milestone version of not only Iron Man, but also a Black Lightning in a way, given how respected he is outside of the suit. And mostly you have Brandon Thomas writing the book. Yes. And then you have Curse with his girlfriend. I think that's supposed to be, I don't think that's Rockins. Rockins got longer hair. So you have basically him just fighting against corporate stuff, trying to save a plane. I found this quite interesting. It's not a bad book per se. It's just that, well, it definitely feels like Hardware. Reading, because I read some of the Hardware comic book, this definitely feels like Hardware. He's written to be in character. The arc here is really good, and Yeah. He's all about taking down basically Edwin Alva, of course. And at one point, this is what we call Curtis. He's like, nope, it's actually, well, it is Hardware. He fights other bad guys, of course. Really fun book. And then we see him basically up in the sky, and there's Icon, of course. It just that he didn't wear his mask, that's why I kind of recognize him. So, and then we have the fandom preview, which is this is my Rachel Holland, who writes pages 1 to 13, 16, 17, 14, written by Greg Pak. This is pretty much basically just the preview that they gave for the fandom thing. Those of you who may not know what fandom was this online convention that basically unveiled a bunch of cool stuff that was very mixed received. Of course, some people basically may not know about it because they weren't in the comics. Like, I've been in comics for years, so basically Static and all this other stuff, just really cool stuff. There's even Blood Syndicate here too. Yeah, they're a group of characters from the Milestone imprint originally. Yeah. And this book was really good. I love the cover, the fact that it definitely feels like a Hardware comic, because, yeah, he would definitely do this in his covers. I gave the book roughly 9 out of 10. Yeah, I didn't care for the inclusion of Black Lives Matter, but it was just really good. And Brandon Thomas himself has been very mixedly received as a writer, especially what he did with Aquaman. But this book, actually, was book really good. It definitely felt like Hardware. I didn't feel anything out of character. I've not read the whole series per se for the original Hardware comic book, which DC has not collected that for some reason, despite the fact they actually own it. They've had released like one trade for Static. And I think there was a trade release for Icon, but that was it. There wasn't a lot of the Milestone comics per se. You had Hardware, obviously. There was Static, Icon. There was Blood Syndicate, Shadow Cabinet, which, yes, that was kind of loosely made into stuff for Stormwatch. But Shadow Cabinet was her own separate thing from Milestone. And Hardware does exist in the main continuity. He was a recurring character in Static Shock, his short-lived comic book, which lasted for 8 issues. You would think like, oh, season 1. Maybe have season 2 this one. Not really, no. Yeah, the ending of this book basically teased what came next, which was Icon versus Hardware. Static Shock did receive kind of a season 2, except his was called Static Shock Shadows of Dakota. And is this book set in Dakota? It is. The universe is kind of referred to as Dakotaverse. Kind of, because basically the city has said it. It's basically, I think it's supposed to be an alternate version of Detroit. Yes, give out the factory stuff they have there. But overall, really, really good. I do agree that the whole thing with Static being social Black Lives Matter, it was not a good idea. Not gonna look for him at all. But this book was really good. I enjoyed this one. Yeah, in case the milestone's up, I think the only one that's up to review is just Static Shock Shadows of Dakota, Icon Season 1, Icon versus, actually it's Icon Rocket Season 1, Icon versus Hardware, and Blood Syndicate Season 1. Yeah. That's also the review for the Milestone Return stuff. Yep. So yeah, that's pretty much it for today's video. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, notifications. I wouldn't have time to do a video tonight, but it's getting kind of late, so I'll see you on tomorrow, okay? Bye.